Deb Dana, welcome to the Science of Psychotherapy podcast. It's so great to have you here.
And it's really nice to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Now, Deb, you are the one that has brought the polyvagal theory to therapists in a way that is just easy to understand. Stephen Porges, obviously, brought all the science together and gave us this wonderful theory. But you're kind of like being the interface between, Stephen and the rest of us, so that we can understand this. Can you just give us, for those that don't know a lot about you and where you've you started this journey with polyvagal, can you just give us a little brief intro into Deb Dana and the polyvagal theory?
Yeah. And I do. I love being the, sort of the translator between the science, Steve's brilliant development of the theory. And he really is a brilliant person and very kind, and has been very supportive of my translating his work into clinical practice, and now beyond into sort of everyday ordinary use. So, that's kind of the beauty of polyvagal, is that it does apply, not only in therapy, but in our daily lives too. And I, like many therapists, had an interest in sort of the neuroscience of psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And I had studied interpersonal neurobiology and had some, experiences of really getting to know the human brain in that way. And then I read Steve's book, and when I found polyvagal theory, it was as if something fell into place. And it was, for me, this piece, this moment of, oh, now I understand it. And from that point on, I'm sort of the kind of person that reads something and then wants to bring it to my clients or colleagues or, family, wherever. It's like, oh, I want everybody to know this. And it became clear immediately that I needed to translate it in some way, because Steve's writing can be dense.
Yes,
So
yes,
that's where it
absolutely.
started. And it's been a journey since then. It's been really fun.
Yeah. And this is one of those theories which is foundational, isn't it? I mean, it's nothing that is particular to any type of therapy or even to psychotherapy per se, but it's one of those foundational understandings of the human condition.
Yes, and I like that you say that up front, because it's not a competition for any certain kind of therapy. It's not in itself a therapeutic modality. It really is a foundational platform that I truly believe therapists need to understand, and doctors and lawyers and everyday people need to understand, because it is the operating system for your body, and it's the operating system that is at work in every moment of your life.
Yeah. So personally, how did it change your work with clients?
It immediately changed the way I connected with clients, and I've been blessed because my clients have always known that I'm sort of curious about new ways of doing things. And so if I come in on a Monday and say, oh, I have this new thing that I'd like to explore, they're all like, okay, here we go. So my population of clients at that time were very willing to dive in with me. And what I found immediately was, as soon as you started talking to clients about the three basic states of their nervous system, they had these moments of going, oh, now it makes so much sense. And so when
Right.
you start getting that feedback that clients are going, oh, now I get, oh, and those sort of responses, then it's like, oh, now I know I'm on the right track. So, in the very beginning, I just started by saying, let's, talk a bit about these very basic, nervous system in these three states. And
Yeah.
so you get to know them, and they really grabbed hold of that immediately. And then that piece around understanding that each state brings a very different way of seeing who you are and who you are in the world was the next sort of foundational piece. Because once we began to understand that, and they could have an experience of seeing that when they're in that anxious, sympathetically driven state, the story is one of people are dangerous, the world is dangerous, and I have to protect. Then we knew that in order to change the story or work with that piece of traumatic history, we had to have enough regulation in the system to do that. Otherwise, we're just stuck in that story,
Yeah,
right?
let's yeah, let's
Mm,
let's just flesh this out a little bit when it comes to state dependent. So what the vagal system, the state that our nervous system is in and the stories we're telling ourselves. Can you just give us a bit more depth to that?
sure, yeah. So we all of us all the time have at least three stories that are available to us because we have these three basic states of our nervous system. And if we think about clients for a moment, clients come to you stuck in one of those stories. That's why
Right.
they're coming to therapy. So they're either stuck in a sympathetic story of danger and being at odds with the world, or a dorsal story where the world doesn't exist and they're floating, disappearing, unseen, invisible. And what we need to do is we need to bring enough of that other state, the ventral state, which is the state of safety and connection. We need to bring enough of that energy alive so that they can be grounded in a story that says there's hope and there's possibility, or there are at least options. And from that place, we can then look at the experiences of sympathetic and dorsal and begin to, come to them and be with them rather than be hijacked by them. So it's although polyvagal is a complex theory in some ways, it's also a very simple theory in other ways because ventral vagal is the active ingredient in any of this work we're doing. And so we just need to have enough ventral on board to support being able to create a different relationship with whatever trauma stories are held in sympathetic or dorsal. So,
Right, right. Yeah. So
yeah.
this very this bottom up understanding. It's really interesting because so dorsal. I've always just thought the feigning death, fainting
Mm,
kind of
mm,
response. But when you say things like becoming invisible,
yes. Yeah.
that's a very interesting
Mm,
um,
yeah.
mental position and story
Yes.
that we
Yes.
have that
Yeah.
is driven by this nervous system. Yeah, yeah,
Right. So your biology is creating the platform, and then that energy is getting fed up to your brain, and your brain's making up the story to match the biology. So in dorsal, where I'm in that numb, collapsed, not enough energy in my system place, the brain then makes up a story that, you know, um, I'm unseen, I'm unheard, I'm unworthy. The thought most of my clients tell me about dorsal is that they feel abandoned and lost and alone where no one is ever going to find them again. So it's that sense of really being, just totally floating away and not grounded or connected to anything. And you probably can even feel a little bit of it in your system as we talk about it,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it comes alive quickly.
yeah.
And then, which is a very different story than the sympathetic story of the world's dangerous and I have to protect myself by being actively mobilized, right? So you can really feel the difference between those. And once clients, I have an exercise I do where, and I can offer it to you. It's a very simple one. If you
Sure.
think of some very simple little um, irritation, right? If we're on a 1 to 10, think of something in the 1 to 3 range, you know, the,
Right,
and
right.
and then anchor yourself in ventral first, so that you're feeling, like, oh, I'm organized enough to deal with this, and
Yeah, yeah.
and from that place, just go listen to your sympathetic nervous system and see how would your sympathetic nervous system, that place of mobilization, what's the story there?
Right, right.
And then go to dorsal and what's the story there?
And the
And then come back to ventral and listen to the story. So you and I had a moment this morning, just as we were getting ready to start this recording, where you said hello and I didn't say hello in the way I wanted, and I said, "Oh, can we do this again?" Right. So if we take that
yeah,
little piece
yeah.
from sympathetic, my sympathetic story is, "You are so bad at this. Why don't you just give it up? People are going to think you're awful at this. It's this
Right.
energized
Yeah,
catastrophe, right?"
yeah.
From dorsal, the story is, "Oh my word, you not learned, you just should give this up and don't even try this anymore." You can
Yeah.
feel it, right? And then
Mm,
from ventral, the
mm,
story is, wow, it's a good thing this is not live. We can do it over again. We'll just push the button and start over. And there's a
yeah.
little humor in it. So you can
Yeah.
see, right?
Yeah.
One experience, three very different stories. And if I remain anchored in ventral, that's the
Mm,
story that I can be in, the one that's like, wow, that was a crazy start. Let's try it again.
yeah.
Right. But what happens for most of our clients, and even for many of us nowadays, because the world is so challenging nowadays, that
Mm,
we get pulled into one of those other stories and we get stuck there. We can't find our way back,
right.
what I call home, back home to ventral.
Right, right. And as you say, these different states, they're neither, good nor bad.
Mhm.
But it's when you get stuck,
Yes.
that's when it's problematic.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I just talk a little bit about co-regulation? And you've
Mhm.
spoken before about the importance of touch and co-regulating, specifically in therapy, but in life in general. And now we're in this unusual situation with COVID-19, and there's all of the social distancing is happening, and we're very much separated. And I don't know how long it's going to take us to get back to
Mhm.
normality. If what before COVID-19 was normal, um, but what do you think is going on for people in general here, and specifically for therapists, who are used to having proximity, with clients when we're not allowed to have that now.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a fascinating topic because we are humans. We do need touch. Humans need this in contact, skin to skin
Mm,
contact. I don't know what the world's going to look like on the other side of this. Are
yeah.
we going to shake hands routinely or not? A lot of my work is when I'm in person with a client, is sitting next to them on the couch so that they can feel my presence from that contact along the side of the body.
Mm,
I do a lot of reaching out a hand, the hand in the middle of the back. These are basic practices that I do, and I don't know, because now instead of sending a cue of safety to the nervous system, it likely will send a cue of danger, and be in that place where it's both the longing for touch and the sense that that's dangerous. So it's going to be interesting to figure that out.
yeah, I mean, just in introductions, I mean, socially the normal thing is to shake your hand, and if you don't extend your hand,
Mhm.
that could be perceived as a threat, even
Right.
though we all know, and we can rationalize, oh no, we're social distancing in that, but there's something,
Mhm.
we talk about the interoception, that
Yeah.
there's probably something deeper that says, oh, this is threatening.
Right. Right.
Mm,
And one of the things I want to get back to touch for a minute, but before we go there, one of the things that this time is really encouraging us or inviting us to do is to be explicit about what has been implicit. And
right.
I think that's a good thing. I think for those of us now doing therapy online, there's a request to really engage in these explicit conversations and nervous system to nervous system conversations explicitly, in a way that we didn't have to so much when we're sitting with the person in the office, because we're using our clinical wisdom, or our observation, and now we can't do it in the same way. So in some ways, in the world of polyvagal informed therapy, this is a time to really deepen into the skills of creating that language with a client, and stopping and checking in explicitly, which is a good thing.
So, what
Um,
would be some examples of that? I mean, before we started the show, we talked a little bit about ways to connect, over a video conference in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So you and I met, about looking about 40 minutes ago, right? Face to face for the first time. We've had
Yeah.
some emails, but we started talking, then we stopped and said, "Oh, let me introduce myself." So, but already as we were going, our nervous systems were finding a way into connection, right?
Yeah.
And we do that through our eyes, through our voice, through these movements we're making. And on my end, my nervous system feels very much in connection with your nervous system right now. This feels like an easy flow that we're having
Yeah.
back and
Yeah.
forth. And we've done that through um, taking some time through
Mm-hmm.
finding the pace of our conversation, and online it's different,
Yeah.
right? You know, kind of sitting back a bit. And, you know, I've created my space, and, you know, I was telling you, your space is a very inviting
Right.
space. I've
Yeah.
created my space to feel inviting, to feel like, you know, I even can sit further back, because when you're working, it's like, oh, you're here with me in my office. It's not like, oh, we're on a screen together, and you can feel, your nervous system can feel the difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're
Absolutely.
moving,
Yeah.
right? And, you know, and then I can only see you from, like, you know, here up. And so if we're in a session, I might say, okay, so can we just stop a minute, and can you just check in and tell me where are you right now in your nervous system? Where, you know, if I use the ladder map, so where are you on your map? And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you tell me, and I say, so give me some of the clues that told you where you were on your map, because it might, your feet or your hands might be doing something totally, you know, totally disparate from what I see here. I don't know. So it's really more of this curiosity. Like,
Yeah.
it really begs therapists to be really curious about what's going on in your nervous system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think that just going back a little bit, that first impression too about so for therapists who are doing a lot more online, you know, the environment that your client sees
yeah,
is important. And so when Deb came online, she saw my very messy bookshelf, and it's my space is not all neat and tidy like yours is, Deb. And maybe that's part of the character of, you know, who I am and my
yep,
space.
yeah,
Um, but if I was to be, you know, just in front of a blank wall,
mm, yeah,
and it would feel a lot more sort of impersonal and cold, and that you're not really in a, you know,
right,
in a real space with
yeah.
me.
And I had that experience with a colleague the other day. You know, she had set up her space so that she could, her nervous system could look out onto a beautiful, through a window, through a beautiful space, which was so needed for her nervous system. And
Right.
that was fine. And she hadn't thought about what, you know, was in back
What
of
was
her. That,
behind her? Yeah.
so, you know,
Mm,
and for, you talk about your messy space, for my nervous system, that is a real welcoming experience to
right.
feel your space like that.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, and I try to do my space thinking of what, you know, what are my clients more used to, and what would feel like they're welcomed, because we're doing this, our clients are now in their homes,
Yeah.
and we're
Absolutely.
now in their homes, which is the other thing, which makes it a very intimate experience in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, we're in
Yeah.
their homes, we're in certain rooms in their homes, or we're in their cars. Many clients are doing therapy in their cars because it's their only private place. So
Yeah.
it's, you know,
Yeah.
I'm paying attention to that and asking the question, you know, so, you know, how does this land in your nervous system? Because if it's not a cue of welcome and safety, we can play around with that. You know,
Yeah.
I can move somewhere else, I can move some things around, I can, those are the sorts of questions that we do now that perhaps we didn't pay as much attention to before when we were in our offices.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, we've got Richard Hill with us. Hi, Richard.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you for the internet. I hear you just talking about that, and this is one of the little things that is probably one of a good example is when it doesn't work.
Exactly.
And you know, I mean, now I'm a bit older and wiser and had a few kicks of the teeth with the internet over the years, so I'm not quite as panicky right at this moment as I've been for the last half an hour. But
Oh,
it's an interesting, it's a metaphor for other things when the connection doesn't happen, when the connection, because I think there's probably some sessions that we've had where we're sitting there and saying, wow, I don't think the internet's working between us. You know, that
Yeah.
that you know that thing that Lou Cozzolino talks about, the social synapse.
mm-hmm.
um, what sort of ways are we managing that as well? Because I would say my Vegas was pretty poorly toned. Uh,
Yeah.
um, but actually seeing your face,
Mm-hmm.
immediately I thought, oh, God, there's Deb. Well, I know Deb. And actually, I don't know how well I know you, but I've known you so well because I've seen so many things. So these sorts of ways when the connection is made, maintaining that and amplifying that. What sort of thoughts there?
Yeah, so, and I think we have two different things. We have clients who we've been seeing for a while, and the move to online is a bit easier because our nervous systems have been in the same room together and have gotten to know each other, flesh and blood, nervous system to nervous system. And so then it's more a question of, sort of, okay, so, what is it? What was the cue of safety specifically that when you landed here and could see me, helped your system calm? And we'd be exploring those things because I want to know what those cues of safety are because I can do more of them. And then what's a cue of danger specifically, concretely, and I can reduce those or even maybe resolve them. So, those are things. I think it's more challenging when we're taking new clients who are reaching out and we've never sat in a room with them. I've always said that about doing remote sessions, that I like to meet somebody in person first and then switch to remote. And we don't have that luxury now. So
Yeah.
it requires us to be really anchored in our ventral regulating energy and then offer that across the camera and the microphone to a client and experiment with that. Because if I I don't know your nervous systems that well, although I feel like we kind of have a friendship going on. It feels, for some reason, it just feels like we're in this flow together, which is lovely.
Yeah.
With new clients, you're setting that up. And so again, explicitly being curious about it is what we're going to do. And one of the ways that this online work is really benefiting the polyvagal perspective is that it gives you a map and it gives you a language to have these conversations. So rather than saying, so how is this feeling to you, or what do you think about this, which are very different experiences, we can go to your nervous system and we can just create that very basic map of 3 states and say, where is this landing in your system right now? Which really is what I want to know. I want to know the state of your biology, because that's going to give us so much information about all of the other things that are going on. And before you came on, Richard, we were talking briefly about touch and if we're ever going to touch again. And it's interesting. I've had colleagues tell me that they'll end a session by doing this, and people will reach out and touch the screen together. I see. Okay, let's see if we can get your finger in the right place. There we go. And right. It's amazing what can happen over a screen. You can feel the connection. I did a really lovely module on touch the last time I was in person with my training group, and we recorded this really beautiful piece that now I wonder if we'll ever use in a training, because it was about touch, therapist touch. But another part of that module was about client self-touch and about mirrored touch. And the thing that I would encourage people to play around with is inviting your clients to find, are there self-touch places that feel as though it brings more ventral into their system? And then they can use those. Self-touch is not a substitute for being touched by another, but it's helpful because it still presses on your skin and gives you that sense. And then mirrored touch, if and maybe I'll just ask you to play with me for a moment. Is there a touch that feels, are you people who touch here or here, or is there a touch that feels here? So touch there, yeah. And then notice, does it feel more ventral, or does it reduce your ventral to see all of us doing it together?
Yeah, more.
And more. How about you, Richard?
Yeah, I can close my eyes and have a personal sense. What it does is it becomes more intimate, becomes more individual. And as soon as I open my eyes, actually I feel the back of my hand more, the palm of my hand.
Lovely. Yeah, so that's often the experience that it deepens and we feel a sense of connection. And for some people, when I mirror their touch, their nervous system goes, please don't do that. And so again, the lesson here, the which I think is a beautiful takeaway, is that we never make an assumption about another person's nervous system,
Yeah.
right? We play with it, say, so better or worse. And the particular colleague who did the demo with me, it was such a beautiful experience because her nervous system said, please do not mirror what I'm doing. It takes me right out of ventral. And I thought that was brilliant to have, because most of us think automatically it feels connecting, and it doesn't for some nervous systems. So it's a great lesson in this day and age to think, the question always is, so where's this taking your nervous system? So
Yes.
yeah.
Don't read books on body language and generalized information and specify it. But one of the things which is really interesting, I still think that the workshop that I want to take all around the world and have millions of people come and do with me is almost everything I know in psychotherapy I learned in acting school.
Love it.
Because I was an actor for 25 years. And I remember in school and in some of the developments, and sometimes when we were rehearsing, and here's a couple of, this sensitivity was of engagement. Now, I'm not saying this is something that we can do in therapy, but we had exercises where we would play both characters. So I would say my lines, then I would step around and say the other person's lines. So you really learn to hold the engagement. Another one that we would do is also where we would say all our lines with the pauses of the other character, then step out of the circle, and the other character would then come up and say all their lines, because we were rehearsing for film, where you're very often performing your character to a tennis ball or something held in the side. And although and I think this is missing from life a lot, is this ability to be engaged imaginatively. So we have to reproduce that. We have to reproduce that energetic believability, both in the rooms, but now we're experiencing it online. So for me, it's totally, I'm just there because I've done this a million times for 50 years. So it's a very interesting, different engagement with human connection.
Yeah. And I think many of us are struggling with feeling distanced by the screen, whereas others of us are feeling I can reach out. I mean, I think I can reach out and be in connection with both of you through the screen. And what it comes from, my colleagues who are struggling, it really comes from they're losing their anchor in their own ventral regulation. Because once you're in ventral regulation, that comes across, whether it's in the room or across a screen, right? Our nervous systems are still getting cues from each other's nervous systems.
Yeah, I want to go back to my acting schools and tell them, "Hey, this is what we're doing."
Exactly.
I don't think they'd care.
Oh yeah, well, maybe, but yes, it's what we're doing. Whatever we're doing, we are having an autonomic nervous system conversation, and I think that's one of the things that comes out of this. That your big, beautiful brain is wonderful, and your autonomic nervous system is really what's running the show. And so, staying in the nervous system conversation is what we want to do. And as soon as I think I have the answer for your nervous system, we've stopped that conversation.
And in acting, we would call that wooden. When you're just sitting there, producing the lines. But I think this is, and also talking the autonomic nervous system, and it's these interesting names that we have. And then in the polyvagal, we as Porges talks to us, and Stephen talks to us about this social engagement, this other quality that we have, this autonomic, this thing that does it automatically, but this social one that does it more under self-directedness is something that, and not everybody agrees with this in the scientific sort of worlds. I know Stephen gets a bit of argument from people. I mean, I think they're all off their heads, and I'm prejudiced.
Yes.
But I think this autonomic, as in you don't really have control of it, and it is driven by stimulants, and this other aspect that has some degree of control, and the ability, and as you're saying, people saying, "Hey, that doesn't feel so good for me." That really is the social engagement system, isn't it?
Right. That's your neuroception giving you a cue of safety or unsafety. It doesn't feel so good to me. My neuroception said, "Oh, something's not what I want here," and then you're able to verbalize, and then we would be able to have a conversation and figure out what is it specifically about that, right? And where does that take you? What state begins to come alive when you say, "I don't really like that"? And then how do we find the cue of danger or unsafety that was brought, and how do we do something different with it? Absolutely. And unless we are anchored in ventral and our social engagement system, which allows us to do this, is active and online, we can't have those conversations. You can say, "Oh, I don't like that. That doesn't feel good." And I can go to a sympathetic, "Well, I don't really care. It works for me." Right. And then that doesn't work. Or I can go to a, "Oh, okay. What is it you want?" Which is not an engaged, "What is it you want?" Curious, but is a dorsal, giving up. "Well, what do you want?" Right. So again, it's so fascinating
Yeah.
to
What do you
feel.
want?
That's sympathetic. "What do you want?" My dorsal is usually where I go. Is like, "Oh, so what do you want?" Right. Because I no longer matter. I'm not in the equation. Though, "Well, what do you want?" is like, "No, you're going to pay attention to my side of the equation." And then the ventral, "Well, let's figure this out." Is this balanced equation where both matter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Deb, you've got a wonderful lineup of books that you've been writing to help us understand polyvagal theory, and you've got a new book out to help us with our clients and to help our clients have some, well, not homework, but home play, as you say.
Yes, play. And I want to credit my colleague Amber Gray for that term, home play.
For home play, yes.
I just love it's just because right when you say homework, and especially nowadays where all kids are doing this e-learning, we got to come up with a new name for that too. But home play is like this invitation to engage in this practice between the time that we're having a session together. Because what I discovered after I wrote the first book was that I do give home play all the time. Because I don't think you can shape your nervous system an hour a week. It doesn't work very well that way. We need to have ongoing practices. And I was giving my clients these practices, and colleagues would say, "Well, what do I do?" And I started giving, and finally said, "I'm just going to put them in one place in a book where everybody can, kind of reach them and see what fits." And interesting in this time we're in right now, because it is so important for clients to have something that they feel they're able to do, to give them a little empowerment in their life, to not just feel like they're at the mercy of whatever is happening in the world and whatever new restrictions are coming. And so the book is filled with exercises that I still encourage you to introduce with your client in an online session and kind of play around with it and see, how do we need to shape this so it works for you, and then invite the home play during the week, and have some way of your client either keeping a journal so that they can share with you the next week what that was like, because the exercises are not supposed to be things that you do once and forget. At the end of the book, you're going to put together your own program of exercises that feel, these are nourishing to me and I'd like to keep doing them. So yeah, and it'll be exciting to hear what people do with it in this time.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so that's 50 client-centered practices that you've bundled together in a book. And in a similar vein, you have a flip book. So what is a flip book, and how do we use that in practice?
Well, the flip chart is coming out in July, and
Right.
the flip chart, and it actually is still going to be useful if we're still practicing online, which Lord knows if we're going to be, when we're going to be back in an office. But it is a spiral bound chart it's about this by this, so it's a nice size to see, and it has one concept from polyvagal theory and then polyvagal application on each page, an illustration of the
Mhm.
concept. And the lovely part that I'm so excited about, my brilliant editor at Norton came up with, is that when you're looking at the illustration here, you, the client, are looking here, on the back side, I have the description and all of the
Mm.
Right. Yeah.
information about what this is. So I don't have to be totally fluent in all of this to use the flip chart. And I
Right.
have that as a backup in case I want, some words to use to describe it. So I think it's
Right.
going to be great fun.
Okay.
And then the final pages are that write on, write off material, and they have the map, so you can create a map right there with the client in session and write it. So I think it's going to be fun. Yeah.
I love this idea. Yeah. So the client sees the simple diagram and information, and then you can sound very sophisticated because you've got all the detailed information on your side. That's wonderful.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, when we're allowed to be together, you do workshops and you get around, and you were saying earlier on that you've been traveling around the world quite extensively, which obviously the brakes have been put on that. But you're still teaching, and you're teaching online, and there's some teaching coming up, isn't there? So can you tell us a little bit about how we might be able to engage with you?
Yes, yeah. I have moved my trainings online because people still want to dive into polyvagal theory, and it's my passion. I need to keep being able to share that. And so we're going to do one in Australia, actually, that's going to start in June. And if you go to my website, rhythmofregulation.com, you can find all of the postings for workshops I'm doing in concert with other people, or workshops that I'm doing sponsoring for myself. And I will say the Foundations one is the workshop I'm going to be doing with all of you in Australia. And the biggest challenge is finding the time of day to do it so that it works. I'm in Maine, so I'm at the moment 12 hours, and at some point it changes to 11 or 10 or something. I don't know. We all move, but that's the biggest challenge. So I think we've figured that out. That works on both ends, and have broken it up into 6 5-hour training modules. And I think it's going to be beautiful because I really am taking my in-person training and recreating it. So you'll have small learning groups, you'll have breakout rooms, you'll have assistants in the breakout rooms, you'll be doing experiential practices. And I think it's really going to be a fun way to create a polyvagal informed community in your part of the world.
Fantastic.
I think you can be humble and say think, and Matt and I will just tell everybody that it will.
Okay.
Because but certainly that experience they've had just listening to you now, to get the sense of what comes across is what's so lovely about the way you work. And if you actually don't even have to, if at the end of you doing an hour's things you say, oh, and by the way, I do polyvagal stuff, we'd all go, oh yes, of course she does. So I'm very excited about where we're going. But I think although I've come in late, you obviously waited a little bit for me to get in, so I've been able to enjoy a good portion of the conversation here. But we're getting to that point where we need to go, because people are doing whatever they're doing. We know they start to turn off about nowish. What is there something that we have missed, or is there something that you just like to wrap up the session with?
I think for me, as I look at how our world is moving right now, it becomes even more important for us to understand how to reach our own ventral state and anchor there, because it's only from that place that we are going to find our way through this. We have way too many people who are sympathetically mobilized out of a fear of being in disconnection and lockdown for too long, and that pushes stories and actions that are not probably so wise. And then we have another whole part of the country or the world that's in dorsal despair and hopelessness. And so it's really up to us, those of us who can find our way to ventral and anchor there, to then share that regulating energy with the people around us, And, I like to say we're going to change the world one nervous system at a time. And I think right now we are going to send these ripples of ventral vagal energy out into the world. And that is the way our world's going to find its way back to whatever the new way of connecting is.
Yes, be the change you want to see in the world. Yes. So that's it, Matt. I think that's a great little point to wrap up.
Deb Dana, it's been wonderful having you on the Science of Psychotherapy podcast. Thanks so much.
I have just enjoyed. I am starting my day. You're ending yours, I know, but I am starting my day with this lovely sense of being connected to the two of you. So thank you.
It's been brilliant.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, Dana. Bye-bye.